Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're doing well. So, I was in a mood for some poetry, and I think Kipling is a wonderful poet. And I wanted to read to you the poem titled Gentlemen Rankers and give you some commentary on what I think about it. I know I'd love to see what you think about it. Let's begin. Gentlemen Rankers, to the legion of the lost ones, to the cohort of the damned, to my brethren and their sorrow overseas, sings a gentleman of England, cleanly bred, machinely crammed, and a trooper of the Empress, if you please, yea, a trooper of the forces who has run his own 6 horses, and faith he went to the pace, and went it blind, and the world was more than kin while he held the ready tin. But today the sergeant's something less than kind. We're poor little lambs who've lost our way. Bah! 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 We're little black sheep who've gone astray. Bah! Gentlemen, rankers, out on the spree, damned from here to eternity. God have mercy on such as we. Bah! Yeah! Bah! Oh, it's sweet to sweat through stables, sweet to empty kitchen slops, and it's sweet to hear the tales the troopers tell, to dance with blowsy housemaids at the regimental hops. So just right here, you're getting sadness, and then you're getting a mixture of sort of being led to the slaughter, an outcast. Because if you have little lambs, you're like, oh, you've lost your way, you've wandered off into a big time of war, this is not going to be fun for you, you're not fit for it. But then you have the little black sheep, it's like these outcasts. Because the black sheep would be the cohort of the damned, it sounds like. The legion of the lost ones sounds like he's referring to the poor little lambs. And so, to be a lost lamb in war, you're not a perfect soldier. You're out of your league. You bit off more than you can chew. You essentially don't belong. Trooper of the Empress, so it sounds like taking a dig at a queen. But then you also get here, sings a gentleman of England, cleanly bred. So it's like really healthy men with good genetics crammed in as tight as they can as sardines into the ranks of war. Really just kind of getting at the types of people who find themselves on the battlefield. Damned from here to eternity. To me, that could ring of how you would feel sorrow, PTSD, and you're going to have to be held accountable for your actions in war. So there could be that as well. That some people may have committed an atrocity, transgressed the limits of war, and they're going to be held liable with that. Now, the sheep sounds almost appear to mock the hoorah, hoorah, like the motivational sounds you would make in war, but instead he turned it to the sounds of sheep. So the shepherds, the general shepherds, leading their little lost lambs and black sheep to war, to the slaughterhouse, to the culling fields. When he describes sweet to sweat through stables, so I picture that in a symbolic way. When you have good war horses in the stable, the smell of the horse manure, the hay, the horse feed, the horses themselves has its own aroma, and you can even get a bit nostalgic for it and become endeared to it because your nostrils adapt to the different odors harassing your nose. And so these men who are crammed and sweaty sleeping in tents, sleeping in trenches, wherever it is they're sleeping. People might start to have a nostalgia for that once they leave the war. Sweet to empty kitchen slops, so even in wartime, your appetite will change. You might not get the best food, but you're hungry to eat. When that food comes around, you want to eat, so it's sweet. And then he goes further to talk about the stories that are told by the troops. So we have sweet to sweat through the stables, sweet to empty the kitchen slops, and then sweet to hear the story. So you have the scent, hearing, and hunger. So your tongue, in your ears, and your nose, essentially. He's really making it an all-encompassing feeling you can get from imagining the situation he's describing. Also brings in the housemaids who would dance with the soldiers. It was common for some of the elites to open up their homes in wartime, or at least to invite some over for dinner and have a little shindig. They would mingle with the housekeeping staff, the ladies' maids and whatnot. And Thrash the cat, who says you waltz too well. Yes, it makes you cock-a-hoop to be rider to your troop. And branded with a blasted worsted spur. So branded with a blasted worsted spur. So a spur is something you wear on your cowboy boots when you want to make your horse go. So now you can just kick your heels, but a spur was like, whoa, really gets you going. And so if a horse has a little bit of scar tissue from being spurred a lot, it's probably an unbehaved horse and a rider who doesn't know how to make the horse carry on without using spurs. So if somebody is branded like a horse that's been spurred a lot, kind of shows that maybe they are a little bit stubborn, or they're just lambasted so much by their superior. But either way, just kind of shows their personality, right? Because there's a contrast here. You waltz too well. Waltz is a very elegant dance. I like Russian waltzes. I can't listen to music anymore. I don't really. But Russian waltzes, it's beautiful. Those composers made such beautiful songs. I really like waltzes. I can't do a waltz, but I really like hearing it. So the contrast of the gracefulness of a waltz to a horse being spurred, you see the discipline and the disobedience. Because when you have a show horse or a Spanish war horse, they can do commands and like watch a video of the horses that are in Mexico with a mariachi on his back and he's singing and the horse is doing a dance. It's all shiny. There's no scars on that horse. They've been rewarded with treats and carrots. Sure, some get whipped, but they don't have a scar tissue. And you don't really need as many spurs with a horse like that. So, if somebody analyzes the waltzer from the stubborn horse, you would see that to watch the stubborn one isn't as fun as the graceful one who does a show. Hope I'm explaining that well. When you envy, O kingly one, poor Tommy being cleanly, who blacks your boots and sometimes calls you sir. So, when you envy someone who's being very cleanly, very gentlemanlike, the waltz, elegance of the waltz, we have gentlemen of England, cleanly bred, and now we have cleanly referenced again. So maybe sounding like the aristocracy, right? If the home we never write to, and the oaths we never keep. So people who don't write back to their family and their loved ones, they're just in the trauma of war. They're kind of just going through their own mental things, and writing can make them feel more lonely. They don't write it. And then they have promises like, we're going to do this when we get out, and your comrade dies. You're not able to keep that promise. That's what I think of when he writes something like that. And all we know, most distant and most dear, across the snoring barrack room, return to break our sleep. Can you blame us if we soak ourselves in beer? When the drunken comrade mutters and the great guard lanterns gutters, and the horror of our fall is written plain, every secret self-revealing on the aching whitewashed ceiling. Do you wonder that we drug ourselves from pain? We have done the hope and honor. We are lost to love and truth. We are dropping down the ladder rung by rung, and the measure of our torment is the measure of our youth. The measure of our torment is the measure of our youth, so you can be young, not as seasoned, but also so not able to be as withstanding in the pressures of war. Like a guy who serves 5 tours in Iraq, he can handle some of the pressure a lot better than somebody who's 18 and just enlisted there on their first tour, right? But if you look at it from another way, when the young man has his leg blown off, he's tormented, he's going to be going for many years as a cripple. Whereas if a guy did 6 tours, he becomes a cripple, it's still sad, but he at least got to enjoy his virility in his youth a bit more. And then it's going to be a cripple in his old age. So it's really a torment for the youth to be made disabled and lose their lives younger. At least that's how we see it. Right. Now every secret self revealing on the aching whitewashed ceiling, so maybe men laying on their backs staring up at the ceiling, thinking, contemplating, really doing some soul searching, pouring out their secret thoughts, and just really feeling a sense of pain there. It's quite intense, isn't it? God help us, for we knew the worst too young. Our shame is clean, repentance for the crime that brought the sentence. Our pride it is to know no spur of pride, and the curse of Reuben holds us still in alien turf enfold us. And we die, and none can tell them where we died. We're poor little lambs who've lost our way. Bah, bah, bah. We're little black sheep who've gone astray. Bah. Gentlemen, rankers, out on the spree, damned from here to eternity. God have mercy on such as we. Bah, ya, bah. None can tell them where we died. So this is really highlighting to me how when you're getting lambasted in terms of war, they can't always go around and collect the bodies, and they are not necessarily writing down where you died and how they found you to your loved ones, right? So when you get a letter in the mail from the military, your son has died. I'm not gonna say he was face down in the mud with his leg blown off. They ain't gonna say that, right? But they're just gonna say he died. It's pretty dark. God help us, for we knew the worst too young. Kind of just highlighting again, they're so young and they had to see such horrors. But then others would argue that war is a young man's game, because when you get old, you can't be doing that. And he highlights here the alcoholism to just soak themselves in a way that they don't think of the agony. So here he has the beer element as a sort of prescription, whereas it really just makes things worse, because it can bear down on you, hold you in your sorrow, and just really not let you escape that sorrow until you get sober the next day. Like people who get drunk and then they start thinking of sad things and then like really being weird is strange. You see this sometimes in cantinas, like Vicente Hernandez. He's like a romantic singer, and men will be sitting at the bar and they'll sing a song because the guy is singing about romance and their lost love. So sometimes a sad song, alcohol really brings out the emotion. I think in Spanish there's a group called they have a line called Lágrimas de Tequila, like the Tears of Tequila, and I believe it is Los Originales de San Juan who sing that song. And it's interesting because corridos are my favorite type of music almost. And they say, back in my Jahiliya, that is. But I liked the sorrow they would talk about, because it'd make you feel like someone else has felt that sorrow. But then corridos, just some of them just became just about violence. But corridos are also for the cartels. So it's a long history. But my point is that the people who sing corridos, they would drink a lot of beer, trying to hide their sorrow, their childhood, and the trauma, and what they've seen by being in the cartel. And then you have the other part of the culture where the romance comes in, like Vicente Hernandez, who will sing a song about love, and they just drench their sorrow. So you have the drinking to forget the violence you saw and participated in, and you have drinking to soothe the pain of thinking about your loved ones, right? So alcohol doesn't really fix things, but it seems to be a sort of prescriptive medicine that these people put upon themselves in order to endure. And I think that's why they allow soldiers to have beer. But in the pagan sense, the berserkers of the pagans in the past, sometimes they would have a very strong, intoxicating drink they would drink, and they would kind of like, and they would be able to have no fear and challenge the enemy better, they would argue, as they would go in with their axes and pikes and whatnot and hack at each other, right? So it's interesting if you look at how alcohol is used to kind of take the brain like a sponge and pump it full of something that's going to numb it. It's quite strange. And in Islam, we're not allowed to have intoxicants. So our soldiers would have to deal with it sober, which is even better. But I wonder what some poetry about that would be. But those who, during times of war, didn't drench their sorrow. But here he's trying to be like, hey, we have this ache, and staring up at the ceiling, it's not helping. We have to relieve ourselves from the pain. So he's really getting at the pain that they felt and being drenched in sorrow overseas. It's fascinating. And we use today the language of sheep to be like people who are non-thinking, right? And a sheep isn't very violent, but it has a lot of utilities. Meat, dairy, wool, right? Those who shepherd the lower classes can kind of see their masses that they govern as a resource, something to be utilized for their ends, right? Making them as almost animalistic in a way, and therefore disconnected from what happens to them. It's really sad when you see someone shear a sheep in a very mean way and get their wool and hurts them, because those animals are so docile, they can't help themselves, and they get stuck on their back sometimes, and you have to help them, and they're just a little mercy from Allah, because they're delicious and we utilize them so much, but they're just so docile. And so describing soldiers as these little lambs, you're getting at the mental faculty of the naivete and just obeying the generals and being sent where they gotta go, right? Manipulating the love of country for the politics of the elite. It's a very deep topic. Them eating slops when the elites are eating really well. Them facing the horrors of war and using alcohol to numb the pain because of trauma, whereas the elites are drinking it to kind of have a little stress reliever, have a little bubbly moment, a little tipsy moment. So how the different classes in the military will utilize alcohol. Right? It's quite fascinating when you think about it. What do you think? It is a unique poem, and the damned here for eternity, maybe it can feel like eternity to them in a way, because of how the pain just will not leave, just won't let them go. Let me know what you think. By the way, if you'd like to join my blog, It's www.subscribestar.com/MilhanArchive. Hope to see you there.